So good morning, everyone. My name is Nalin Jayakody. I am with Autonomous Tech Lab. So thanks, Professor Mario and Professor Gonzalo for inviting me to do this talk. So I'll try to do it on a general perspective of the, the art of research or the doing research, some of the terminologies that we use and the research process. And since it's a short talk, so I'll try to summarize, my own experience as well. And I may not be covering entire, the area of research skill because it's a very well developed in a knowledge area. So I'll try to touch upon some of the, the main topics that may be of interest to you. I think since we are a small group, maybe I would like to know your name and also what area you are working on. So that will be, the easier for me to, tail the talk more, efficiently. So let's say, okay, I'll start from myself. So as I introduce myself, my name is Nalin Jayakody, and I work on wireless communication and telecommunication networks. So may you also introduce yourself and the area of your research?
Okay, I can do it. My name is Gonzalo and I work mainly on machine learning.
Great. Mario, would like to introduce yourself? Right. About others, maybe I can call the names from the participant list, or you just volunteer from.
I can see that Sarah and Joanna are also here. Also Ana Quaresma. Don't be shy.
Yeah, you can just tell your name and the area of your research.
Hello, good morning. My name is Sarah Peralta, and I'm a teacher on accounting. So it's a different area, okay?
Yes.
But I'm interested also on this topic that applies for every area.
Yes. Thanks, Sarah.
Hello, good morning. I'm Ana Quaresma, and I'm a professor in Universidade Autónoma de Lisboa. My area is economics, so I'm from the economics department, but I'm interested to assist this conference.
Okay.
And
Thank you
thanks very
so
much. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll try to make it more generalized so you will, that will appeal to economics also.
I appreciate very much. Thanks.
Thanks, Anna. Anyone else to volunteer? All right. So I think since others probably, will come from probably different backgrounds, so I will assuming that it's a general audience. I try to make it more appealing to all of you. Right. So let's get in gear. Right. So this talk is I'm trying to summarize my experience as a researcher. So some of my viewpoint may be biased to one particular area, so I cannot control sometimes that always have the flavor of my own area, but still I try to generalize it, and I would also appreciate your comments to improve the quality of this talk so I can give to a wider audience with the more generalized context. Right. So this is actually a photograph from the well-known scientist of Marconi, and he's an Italian scientist and inventor of the successful wireless telegraph in 1909. So he received also the Nobel Prize in the physics, right? Probably all of you know about the Marconi. There is Marconi Awards, and that's foundation in Italy for Marconi. Right, so what I was trying to give this first impression is, when I was a child, I always dreamed that I should be one of these greatest scientists, you know. And so the motivation is the key for everything in our life. Like, it can be research, it can be sports, it can be, you know, your like hobbies. So everything is driven by your motivation. So all of us need to implant the motivation, the right motivation, for us to drive in this research career. It's a research career, and some people do call it a publication career. Because as researchers, we want to do research, and also we want to make it public, you know, our findings to the community that we are in, and also for the general public as a cause of the public responsibility. And we are in a very important career. We create the knowledge, and knowledge is the power. And we drive the world where it should be. And we also contribute into frame how the living standards will uplift. So we are in a very important career we all should be proud of, as we are defining the future of the mankind on this planet. So then we have to develop this motivation, like I mean, we have to have these, you know, I mean, great scientists and people who has impacted to the world in your respective area, in economics, in accounting, like in, you know, to social science, to engineering, to telecommunication. So every field there are people, you know, who has made a huge impact to the area that we are in. And we are here to, you know, take the lead and create the next level of the research and the knowledge creation. So research is a systematic inquiry that helps to make the sense of the world that we are in at the moment. So it is about, like, it's not about, you know, reading a lot of books and then finding a lot of facts, which, you know, which gets us to area of some knowledge. But I think when we do a lot of research, when we do read a lot of books and finding facts, which gets us into a research question. So which is the place where we begin the research career, right? And it also helps us to orient everything what we do, and also it helps us to select what goes in, you know, what goes out, and what is relevant, right? So while we are in this very important publication career, we also have to keep reading ourselves. Like I was telling to my mom, still I am like schooling, because I am on the permanent schooling, right? My career is to read, right? And like sometimes you feel that you never stop going to school. Actually, we haven't. We are still searching and our thirst for the knowledge. But the only difference is now we are creating the knowledge, right, for the future. Right. So when I was reading like a lot of literature about this, you know, the research, and I came across on this book, and I taken actually this figure. There are 3 types of research are undertaken in the world. And if you're looking at the viewpoint of its application, objectives, and the inquiry mode. So there are quite famous, the application-based research, right? So there are 2 kinds. One is pure research and applied research. And if you're looking at the objective level, we have descriptive research, correlational research, and exploratory research, and explanatory research. And also, if you're looking at the inquiry mode, we have 2 types. One is the qualitative and the quantitative research. So the pure research is more concerned with the science and engineering, if I'm not mistaken. So it is more looking at the development, examination, you know, quantifying, verification of some methods, procedure, or technique, and, you know, defining I mean, some form of the body of the research methodology, etc. For example, the example of a pure research can include, let's say developing an instrument to measure the stress level in people and finding the best way of measuring people's attitude, right? So this is a pure research. So pure research generally targeted by, the scientist, and they aim to publish their research reports, and the research reports are in more technical language. So like as a scientist, I publish my articles in the very focused journals, that are only aimed at my own community, right? So, and the economist will publish in their own area that may not be of interest to general public. But on the other hand, right, we also publish our articles in general science communications where public can understand. So that is not the journal publications. They are more like what that means to the public on my finding. For public may not be interested in to know the complete details of the research methodology, or they may not want to repeat your research question again, but they want to know what it matters to me when I get up early in the morning, right? So I remember when I was at a radio podcast in Ireland, and so I was talking about the driverless cars and how the AI impact back in, I think, so 3 years ago. And the radio, the commentator asked, like, what it matters to me when I get up early in the morning, these driverless cars. That's what I all want to know. So it's quite a difficult question, but I was prepared to answer. So that's actually the second level of our career, that we are enriching the knowledge of the general public through our pure research. So equally as the pure research, applied research also quite important. And most of the research in social sciences, if I'm not mistaken, they are applied research. So in applied research, there are research techniques, procedures, and methods that form the body of the research methodology. So that collects some information, and they process the information, and they're in a useful way. And so the output of the applied research, also research articles, and maybe it can be a policy formation or administration, and the enhancement of understanding of a particular phenomena, particular situation, right? So that's the applied research. So the research methodologies in pure research and applied research can be also vary. Sometimes in applied research, the survey-based research methodology can be used. And in pure research, we use experimental-based, data-based, like, data-based research. It's also, applied research can also actually use some of them, but the clear distinguish, the point is not exactly clear, right? And so in general, applied research, researchers have a specific goal in mind, and they also got this, the specific time limit. It's also equally applying for the pure research, because the universities or the research, let's say, the bodies, grant agencies, let's say in FCT or European Commission, will not wait, 10 years until we produce our research papers and our findings. So everything has a time bound regardless. Right. So let's get into the next piece of research. What is a descriptive study? So the descriptive study is, for example, it may attempt to describe the type of service provided by an organization. Like, for example, what are the services provided by UAL for academic staff, and the administrative structure of the UAL in comparison to the other universities in Portugal, right? And living conditions of Aboriginal people in Australia, and their community needs, right? And descriptive research could also include, like, means to go through, like what it means to go through a divorce in a societal, point of view. And let's say education achievement of a child versus the house domestic violence, with the house domestic violence. So they are more on the descriptive nature of study, right? So that actually classifies systematically a situation, a problem, or phenomenon, or a service, right? So that is more or less on the systematical way of study, and we call them descriptive study. There's another study called the correlational study. Actually, I was thinking to talk about this, and I also didn't know some of them in the beginning, right? When I started my career, I realized actually we as engineers, we can still, help and also contribute to our social scientists. Like if we know about, the research methodologies on these particular areas. And I mean, social scientists can also help the technologists, to understand certain impact on the societal perspective, right? But I mean, we need to know like each one's domain a little bit, so we can then start interdisciplinary research. Because I mean, we need to respect everyone's skill set and also understand the know-how, and then it will be easier for us to refine research question that will be of interest to both communities, right? Right, the correlational study is quite interesting, right? So that actually discovers the relationship between two or more variables, two or more situations, two or more phenomena, right? So this study generally impact on certain activities. For example, let's say for you all, we are launching an advertising campaign to recruit students. So one study, our economic department can do is, what is the impact of advertising campaign of you all on the student intake? So the economic department can do this study and can study the correlation between this impact, like whether our marketing department or the advertising campaign involves social media marketing, use of Facebook, Instagrams, and other, you name it, because all these youth are now on the social media. It's not like our time. And or else like we are only using the traditional approach. For example, just we advertise on our website and put on the newspaper advertisement, or are we going to the television and the radio broadcast? Do we have these, the FM and stuff like this? So then the university can also, use the research finding of the department to, realize their number of intakes, to improve the number of intakes, improve the quality measures of the intake. So the research of the, the university helps on its own because it's a homegrown knowledge. And another study can be, what is the relationship between the stressful living and the incident of the heart attack. So at the moment I am in Finland, and all of us know that it is one of the happiest nation on the planet. But on the other hand, it is very cold country, so it's about -1 degree at the moment. And so I know that the sun, the exposure to the sun is quite limited here. So then, another research question would be like, given this limited, sunlight, and with the, the deficit of vitamin D, and how Finland achieved to be, still happy, one of the happiest nation, right? So what factored in this achievement, right? So that can be a correlational study. And another correlational study can be, what are the effect of the health service in Portugal, in controlling the COVID-19 impact, right? And another correlational can be like home environment on education achievements, like when home environment will improve, would the educational achievement of the kids will improve, right? So we can study this correlational study, and they actually, maybe somebody has done it, but I don't know. But around us we are living, there are a lot of correlational study we can do in order to understand the situation in a more scientific way. The third one is explanatory research. So the explanatory research is quite serious, and that attempt to clarify why and how there is a relationship between two aspects of a situation. So this type of research kind of explain why stressful living results in heart attack, why decline in mortality, for example, followed by the fertility decline, why the campaign of the marketing team affect the why and how the marketing team campaign affect the student intake, and how the home environment affect the children's level of academic achievements, right? And how the public health policies, affect the control of COVID-19 and its impact. So the explanatory research requires a detailed research study, and it should be very systematic and need to follow established research procedure, right? And so before we embark such a detailed research study, we do a small study. We call it explanatory research. Exploratory research is when the study is undertaken with a limited knowledge of a particular area. So we want to study something that we don't have a specific knowledge to that particular area. And then we undertake a limited study and also see what are the achievements made in this particular area, and whether the area is already, full, like we don't have any room. But I personally believe every one of us are different, like we are unique individuals, so our viewpoint will be different. So I believe every one of us has a room, but it doesn't mean that we should do very historical piece of research, because then it will be not have much impact to the society, and our public funds can be questionable, our time can be questionable, right? And also our our management of the university is looking at our research output, and we can't publish in a very good journals if you don't do timely research, right? If you don't read the most updated research outputs. So I would think that this exploratory research is something that all of us need to undertake before we embark our detailed research program, right? So it is something that we do always in our career. We do a limited amount of study, and then see whether I have room, whether my skill set would fit between the new area, or do I have to learn new area. So for example, my colleague, Gonzalo, is an expert in machine learning and artificial intelligence. So myself is not. So my education was in electronics engineering, and that time we were told that AI is only computer science and you don't have to learn it. But now the world is different, and about 10 years ago, world talks about the automatic systems, but now we talk about the intelligent systems. And I cannot have my research career without, having a sound knowledge on AI and the machine learning, right? So I took a training school 2 years ago, and I started learning it. And I also now have a PhD student on this topic, like a machine learning in wireless communications, like in my research area. So that is why I said we are we are continuously lifelong learners, as well as while we are producing our knowledge to the society, we also have to learn every day. I know, you all are having the same or even the greater attitude towards learning and also producing. So I'm just sharing, my experience, and I would also welcome you to share your experience, and we learn from each other. So the last type of research is the qualitative and quantitative research. So I think everybody knows about qualitative and quantitative research. So the distinction between the quality and the quantity lies on the two questions. The first one is aim of your inquiry. So that means, whether what you want to do. And secondly, use of your findings. So are you doing something, the policy formation or the process understanding, right? So based on these two, we will go either qualitative study or the quantitative study. So traditionally, technological, scientists only, will go with generally quantifying the things, right? Because we like to quantify things. We use statistics, probability theory, and optimization techniques. And this, same way, actually, our colleagues in, the social sciences, business, accounting can, also follows the quantitative approach. They do use the statistics as the language to better, better picturate your study to a public. It's not that you go and say stuff, but you back your argument by the statistical norms. So then it is more convincing to the audience that you want to, talk about. So the use of statistics is a well-known practice in the quantitative study, but it doesn't need to be always. We don't have to have that dilemma. The statistics is the only integral part of the quantitative study. So the main function of the statistics is to act as a test to confirm or contradict the conclusions that you have drawn based on our understanding, right? Or based on the data. So statistics help you to quantify the magnitude of a relationship or the association, and that also helps us to provide the indication of the confidence you can place your finding and help you to isolate the effect of different variables, right? So it's one way of doing your quantification, the use of the statistics. So use of the optimization techniques can be also helpful. And so the qualitative approach is quite different, right? So in the qualitative approach, you primarily want to describe the situation. But I think even if you do a qualitative approach, it's good to connect your approach with the quantitative measures. Then your results, your study will be much more impactful. Regardless of the area that you are in, you can have your research question, let's say 70% qualitative and 30% of the quantitative nature. Because without having the quantitative research, unless it is only a survey research, so this may not be quite interesting for the many people, right? So I suggest that to always link your qualitative and quantitative approach and to have their strength, in your area. So it's actually, both quantitative and the qualitative research have their own strengths and the weaknesses. So the measurements and the analysis of the variable, that talks about information is, usually obtained from research study are dependent upon the objective of your research, right? So in many studies, you need to combine, I think, both qualitative and the quantitative measures. And for example, suppose you want to find the types of service, let's say, available for the victims of domestic violence in Lisbon, right? And then their utilizations, right? So the type of services available in Lisbon for domestic violence is a qualitative measure, right? And the aspect of study, as finding out about them entails descriptions of the services, they are qualitative measures, right? And probably the extent of their utilization, and what sort of people utilized, what education background they utilized, and what digital know-how they need utilized. And probably they are on the, you can do a quantitative study on that as well. So generally you can combine, like for example, people in technology, they do a lot of quantitative research, and then they can make a general justification to the qualitative measures, by working on 6G wireless communication, how the living of the people, improved, and how the 5G business model impacting the global economy, right? And for example, how these connected cities concept can be realized through the strong wireless communication technologies. So these research questions comes with the qualitative and the quantitative approach. So I think I have spent enough on this. So let's move on to the main research attributes. The first attribute of, so don't mind on this 6G slide, because I'm working on this particular area, so I just use those. Right, so what are the attributes of a research? The first attribute of the research is the significance. So if you are doing market research, if you are doing a social science research, if you are doing historical research, so every research has to have its significance justified, right? It has to matter, and we have to care about the significance. So when you are stating your significance, you must also highlight how your research will be beneficial to the development of science and the societal in general, right? The second one is your research question should be researchable within your skill set, or within your equipment that you have, or within your resources that you have access to, right? So something that you can answer by doing research in a specific period of time. So when you are creating your area of research or finding a research question, you should also think whether it's researchable. Okay, I don't have access to supercomputers, right? Or I may not have access to the very large survey, that I need about 1,000 surveys. And can I make a general comment on this then? So maybe you can refine your questions then, maybe your question is too broad and cannot research in a specific time, specific resource, So within the given limit of the resources and the time, you need to decide how you are refining it. And the novelty is very, very, very important, So there are plenty of research questions that we might think are answered already, but as I said, there is a room for every one of us. Then it is up to us to redefine the novelty of this, And of course, you can always find answers need to be rethought in light of trends that can, contemporary, change, because some of the solutions are given for a particular research question will be timely, right? Maybe not generalized. And also you need to, through a thorough literature review, you need to come up with the very strong justification on your novelty if you want to publish in a good journals. Every journal asks you to spend at least half of the page through the literature review to illustrate the level of novelty of your work. So when you are writing your research paper, you need to explain your literature review in the beginning. So literature review is a story that you are telling to the audience, right? So it should not be a, let's say, listing. This paper talks about this, and this paper number 2 talks about this, paper number 3 talks about this, and 4 talks about this, and here me talk about this. So this is not the literature review that you write in the introduction section of the journal. So when you're writing a journal, you have to be a storyteller, right? And you are telling story to the kids, you are telling stories at the class. So we have to be very good storytellers. So we tell a story to the editor about the area that we have chosen, and you group your references. Let's say I am writing a short journal paper. I got about 20 references, right? So first what I do, I group them. I group them into different classifications, different technologies, different methods, different assumptions. I say that reference 1 to 5 talks about, talks about, solving, let's say, what I would take, let's say we take about 3G, third generation wireless communication. So reference 1 to 5 talks about the technologies used in 3G, but references 3 to 10 talks about technologies used in 3G with the latency requirements, you know. And then you said, however, reference 2 and 7, you know, do talk about the use of the heavy optimization techniques, and due to these reasons, and they are not practical, right? So you need to build a story in your article. So I might do a separate talk about my experience on how to write research papers. But today my mandate is still to do the research part. I'm not going to touch more on the scientific writing part. But I want to highlight this. Actually, I review, you know, a lot of papers, and I'm editor of many journals. So I see that people, I mean, not building that right story that they should build. And you need to build that story, and you need to convince the reader that there is a deficit in the knowledge, and this deficit is handled or filled by this paper. This paper is about filling this gap. So it is an art that you need to cultivate yourself, right? It's an art that you need to learn. So I might talk about this later. Right. So now I go to developing a research question. So I will spend some time on this, how you develop a research question. It's very important. So when you're thinking of defining your RQ or the research question, you need to wonder upon, what do I want to know, right? Are there anything interesting, or are there any concrete points arising from the data? And do I understand the data? And how I'll be correlate the data? And can I solve this, right? So they are the components that you should think about, right? So your research question should be summarized the significant issues that is of interest to your own community. So when you're defining the research question, right, it's very important that you undertake a thorough literature review. Literature review is, you know, every one of us doing. So I request all of you, and I suggest that all of us being researchers in this meeting will spend at least 1-2 hours reading one paper every week, right? Read about your area every week. It doesn't matter whether you like or not the author, but read what these guys are trying to do. At least read the abstract and the conclusion, if you don't have some time, you know. And so it's very important that you read. It's also important that you discuss your research with your peers. I think this research success of your research career, it is more aligning with your collaboration with others. And through the collaboration, you gain more insight, more knowledge, and you will be more productive, you know. And it's an easy way to gain knowledge as well. Sometimes you may not have to read, 10 books, but if you talk to a colleague and, you know, read maybe one book, but you are sharing your knowledge, and your colleague will share his knowledge. So try to develop relationship with at least 1 or 2 strong researchers in your area, and try to, you know, develop research collaborations with them. Sometimes, okay, when I was an early career researcher, I feel, okay, I'm in my lab and reading, and I don't know where I am ending, right? So, okay, my time also going. I have to like be productive and still read. So there are areas that, you can spend a lot of time in reading, but area I am in, like, it's very progressive. And so I need to be very, very quick, and also spend enough adequate time on the reading as well. So I suggest, amid your teaching responsibilities and administrative works at the university, so spend, put this in your Google Calendar or whatever the calendar you're using, to read one paper. So you read it and then make notes about this. And I, as a practice, I make a one-page note about one paper. At that time, I was doing in the book, But since I'm traveling so much, and also now everything with the new normal condition, everything goes online. So I try to keep it on the OneDrive or the Google. So, you know, it travels with me, that's on the cloud. So it goes with me everywhere. It's easier now. But, you know, use whatever the way. So when you read your research papers and try to make notes, and when you're trying to make notes, you can write about the strength of this paper, weaknesses of this paper, and what are the areas you can contribute to improve. And if you read 2 or 3 papers, and that will become a thesis for a MSc student, PhD student, you know, and you can give this as a thesis also for your undergraduate final year projects, you know, because every, I think, degree programs comes with the project. So that can be a good project for the student, and that will be timely as well. So you make these notes, and that will be very good repository for you to refer, because you will not have to read the entire paper. You just read your notes, and that will give you a quick snapshot on what this paper about. So also when you are doing the literature review, it also provides you a theoretical background on your study and helps you to establish the links between what you are proposing to study and then against the established knowledge on your area. And also it helps you to you know, to show your findings, you know, and who has contributed to this area. And so I think it very helpful to integrate your research finding to the existing body of the knowledge. So then reader knows, okay, it is not that you in your little lab you just did something and you publish, but this guy has read what is around the world. You know, he has done enough literature search, and he provide very solid references, right? So that convincing your readership as well. So generally, I suggest that you follow, you know, your standard, you know, search engines. Like generally, there is humanities index, and I think for certain abstracts of the articles can be found from the ERIC, ERIC. And there are also a lot of citation index, social citation index, science citation index. So these index journals have, you know, have reached to some prestige in their area, so you can trust them and you can read them. So in my area, like in engineering, and especially electronics engineering, we use IEEE Explorer. And there are many community in science and humanities, and also engineering can rely on Science Direct. That's, I think, Elsevier library, and ACM library for computer science. And now they have MDPI open source. I think all MDPI journals that cover entire research dimension. So they, you know, you need to have that fees for the publication. So it's open source. So we pay for the open source. So it's kind of available for every one of you, and that will be helpful, you know, to study these. And I also follow archives. Archives is a great way to get a paper before it is published. You know, certain areas, papers takes more time to go through the review process. And maybe after the project is ended, the paper will publish after a year. But during this time, you know, and as a reader, and you may not have access to this paper to read. So now, so some researchers use archives, you know, and they archive it in the online. It's free to download for everyone. So you may use archives as well. They are not peer reviewed yet. They are undergoing the review process. So you know, but still, if you know the authors they have published in the past in the good journals, probably you can trust on this archive as well. So these are the points that I want to highlight on the research question. So the next slide, I talk about the how you formulate a good research question, right? So it's like you know, chicken and egg, right? So you cannot effectively undertake a literature search without knowing some idea of a problem that you wish to investigate. And on the other hand, the literature review can play an quite important role in defining or reshaping your problem. So in a nutshell, you can think that the literature review is the ongoing process that you should be doing while you undertake your study. Maybe it is not in the books mentioned about the research methodology, but I do practice it. I keep literature review active until I, submit my papers, right? So it is a good practice also. So generally, when you are doing your, when you are reviewing the literature, and you learn what aspect of your subject area being, studied by others, and what is the most latest foundation as well. So in a good research, question should be relevant. So the relevant should be highlighted in your article when you are writing or report or thesis. And the research question should be manageable given the time and other resources. And the research question should not cover large scope. It should cover very specific scope that should be able to research well. And your research question should be very clear and simple, so that your editorial team and your readers can understand when they are reading your work. And so it shouldn't be a historical piece. It should be something related to ongoing research interests of the world. So if you want to know what are the the current research trends, you can read United Nations 2030 Grand Challenges, right? So these grand challenges, they highlighted large amount of areas that cover all of our areas, like clean water and clean energy and connected cities, stuff like this, and like about economics, about finance. So everything is covered, but they will give you a new challenge. But your disciplinary area, remains same, but you are using that knowledge to address the world grand challenge. So you may need to update on that. In addition, there are national research priorities by the Portuguese government. So the government defined, let's say 2030 government vision on the research priorities. So you need to, align your research according to the priorities, because you need to get your grant money to conduct the research. And in order to get your grant money, you need to align with the research priorities of the country where you are living, and the time of the world. Now the pandemic, like COVID-19, would attract actually grant money quite easily. And then it should be answerable, like within the limitation, you should be able to answer the question. Since time is flying out, I will be quite quick. And then you need to formulate your research question. So first you identify the broader subject. So when you identify the broader subject, you may not go to the very specific, very strong journals to read, right? It depends on where you are at that particular field. And probably I would read tutorials, magazines. Like magazine is not the magazines of the people that they read in the general public, but in your particular area there are magazines available, right? So in engineering there are magazines by various publishers, and the scientists are writing, but they write in a broader perspective with no equations and no much research methodologies highlighted, but results and the bigger picture. That helps you to understand the broad area of your subject. And then you do literature review, and then you narrow down the topic, and you ask yourself why and how. You make the notes on each paper that you read, and be specific. And your statement, the purpose of statement should be very clear. So then you will go this iterative process until you refine your research question before you embark your research program. So I just found this this video. This is a very famous English joke about the chicken crossing the road. So let me share the sound first. Okay, and okay. Give me a second. I need to play this.
Nalin, you are not able to share the sound. Is that a problem?
Yes. I think because I'm using this, I'll skip it for now.
Normally, when you select the button share to share your presentation, at the bottom there is a box.
Yeah, actually,
you select to share your audio. Okay.
Actually, I made a mistake. I'm presenting my PDF version, so it doesn't actually have that option to play the video. So I will skip it for now, and I will go to the next slide. Actually, this is about refining the, your research question. What I will do, I will share my slides later, and that will have this video. Right. So, so then once you are done with your refining your research question, then you come to the area where you do the system justification. So this system justification is not in every disciplines. So that may be in some disciplines only, right? So so because it's based upon your research methodology. Once you refine your research question, whether you want to use a survey research methods, you want to use a database research methods, or you want to use experimental research method, or any other method. So it's depend on this. You may have this actually 7 step, but generally in engineering there is a system justification that you are building a system, and that should be justified, right? And the assumptions that you made should be justified, right? And so after the literature review, the system justification becomes quite challenging, and especially if you are new to your area. So you can actually, that is why where collaboration is very important, that will save your time and save that's easy way, and also learn from others as well. And to be realistic, in most cases, the standing on the shoulders of the the giants would not be a bad idea. And then you may undertake the analysis. So analyzing the performance evaluation metric, or let's say analyzing the what are the merits that you want to analyze of your system. So maybe you want to analyze the latency of your system, maybe efficiency of your system, and the energy consumption of your system, or like analyzing the impact of a certain phenomena. And so analytical part is very important in all kinds of research, I think. So even if it is a qualitative research, so I think it's good to have a little analysis. So one of my colleagues started a project about studying the seed funding mechanism of various universities, and I am part of that particular research work. So I'm
enjoying actually that part, because I also getting a lot of insight on the various research programs taking place across the various universities. And it's sort of qualitative, but we did introduce the quantitative analysis as well. And so various regulations, when they implement, what are the impact to the researchers, and how it is impact in the terms of publications and the productivity and the knowledge know-how build and the capacity building of the particular universities. So the analytical part need to be also, I think, may integrate into the your research area. So the analyzing and then the performance optimization, actually it is not in the every area, but sometimes it can be also useful. Now I think the new world, AI is for everyone, right? So artificial intelligence sort of things, at least the basic know-how we all need to learn, whether we like it or not. And we have to have some sort of knowledge about these trends around the world. So you can use all these techniques and do small data related analysis, or some of the observations, stuff like this, and that helps you to fine-tune your research, and that will be appealing for the many, bigger audience, if you like. Right, so simulation and prototyping, it's again that for mostly on the engineering and the computer science areas. So I will go to I'll go to this slide directly, actually, that might, with the timing. So here I will actually conclude the criteria of good research. So what is the criteria? So first one is the purpose of research should be clearly defined and common concepts should be used. And second, the research methodology should be standard. So there are many research, I think there are 4 main research methodologies, like survey and the experiments and the data and simulation, stuff like this. So the research procedure used should be described in a very, detailed manner. And that mainly help another researchers to repeat your research. That is for the future, advancement, and keeping the continuity on your area of your study. Otherwise, you're closing down your area and no one will go into cite your work because you have not given enough provision for the improvement. And the next one is the procedural design of the research should be carefully planned, and that yield the results that are area that you are in, should be, should be of like, interest. And then you need to highlight honestly what are the limitations and assumptions. It's okay to be, it's okay to be honest and say that, okay, I'm not doing the, the wow factor research, but I do something, but it has it's a trivial, but it has a large impact. That's okay, right? That is like understandable. And then so the research report should be very flat and frank, and the flows of the procedural design and the estimation should be clear as well. And then research design, like if you are using very solid design that cannot be adapted for the new situation, probably you might need to change your concept. And it should be kind of the adjustable for the new situations, new world. And if you're only studying a particular system, particular phenomena, that you can actually very honestly highlight this is only valid for this particular research design. And there should be sufficient data to analyze, and that should be adequate to reveal the significance and the methods of the technology that we use. So then your validity and the reliability of data can be checked quite carefully. So you also need to provide the conclusion only for the situation or the data that you use. You cannot make a very global conclusions about your area, and try to do a very specific conclusions on the research that undertaken. And then, as any other professions, the integrity and the commitment is also quite important. So I think I will wind up here, and I will also share the slides with my through our colleagues. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, so any suggestions, maybe I might learn, or I will answer.
Mario, you are muted, Mario.
Okay. Nalin, thank you very much for this very nice presentation. I think it was a very useful view about research for all of us, because this presentation was not only focusing on technologies, but it was a wide view of the research. So I think it was very useful. Thank you very much for this. So I just would like to ask a question in terms of applied research. So normally we say that applied research, we used pure research or fundamental research, and we make a kind of proof of concept test that to validate this fundamental research in order to later on to be used, to be sold, let's say, to be sold to companies in order to allow the development of products. So do you agree with that, Nalin?
Yes, yes, actually I agree with that. This applied research is, proof of concept development, especially in the technology, comes with the applied research. And I think when you're defining this applied and the pure research, that also like a specific for certain disciplines. So for example, sometimes more pure research on the like proof of concept sort of stuff, more or less aligning with the, let's say, information theory. Like for example, if we talk about the telecommunication, and in telecommunication, mostly people do on the applied research, and the pure research is more or less a kind of, fundamental study, right? And let's say our information theory community and some wireless communication community, they do the fundamental research. And applied research, as you said, can be of use for commercialization and addressing some timely need, right? And can be even the policy that requires, for example, like how the new normal condition, under the new normal condition of COVID, how the employees should, report into work, and how we estimate their productivity